So, hardened hearts, disobedience, Hebrews chapter 4, verse 8. For if Joshua had given them rest, God would not have spoken later about another day. Whoa, gosh. What are we talking about here? Well, we're talking about Israel crossing the Jordan and taking the promised land. But they did that. Well, yeah, they did. But not the generation that began the journey from Egypt. Okay. And what's this another day thing? Well, let's keep reading and see if we find out. There remains then a Sabbath rest for the people of God. Okay, now we're talking about another day, a Sabbath day. I think most Christians, unless you're a Seventh-day Adventist, don't give much thought to the Sabbath. And it's rarely practiced. Hardly ever have I heard a message, a sermon, or a teaching about Sabbath. It's a kind of a ignored a part of what I believe was God's intentional design. My friend Kevin Oder was the first guy I ever encountered who advocated and practiced Sabbath. And he picked this idea up when he's getting his doctorate of ministry degree at Fuller Theological from Willard Dallas. Okay, so what is a Sabbath? Well, let's start with the simplest and then work out from there. The simplest thing, Sabbath is the last day of the week, the seventh day of the week. And we talked about it briefly before, but God did all of the work of creation in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested. Why would he have done that? Do you think God needs to rest? I don't think he needs to. I think he did it to kick off and model a concept that 1/7 of our week should be set aside for rest. That is so foreign to our culture. I remember growing up in southwest Kansas as a grade school boy. Sunday, nothing was open except one gas station that I knew of. Everything else was closed. No business took place on Sunday. I guess the hospital would have been, maybe the other, but downtown, dead. Nobody was there. In our little town, we had no malls. This was in the 60s, okay? So, that has changed. I live in Las Vegas. There are businesses here that never close. Sunday, just another day to make money. Is this evil? I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that our culture doesn't support, let alone promote, a day of rest. We don't. Our culture, the one of the primary themes of our culture is more, more, more. Do more, work harder, pedal harder, stay open longer, make more money. Okay. So what was supposed to happen on the Sabbath? Well, it's easier to say what was not supposed to happen on the Sabbath was common work. The law stipulated that you could walk, take little trips, but you weren't supposed to. And if you abode by the law, you didn't take long walking or even riding journeys. You could water your livestock. You could, if there was an emergency. Jesus talked about this when the Pharisees got so angry and mean-spirited and aggressive toward him because he healed people on the Sabbath. Jesus said, hey, if you're, okay, a couple of things here. Number one, if a baby reaches day 8, a Hebrew baby boy reaches day 8, he's circumcised, whether that's on the Sabbath or not, okay? Secondly, if you have an ox or a child that falls in the well on Sabbath, you get the kid or the ox out. And then he said, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. Well, it doesn't mean very much to us because we don't practice the Sabbath. All right, let me step back a little bit and talk a little more about what the purpose and function of the Sabbath was. It was for a day of ceasing normal activity. And I like how my friend Kevin Oder puts it. He said, it's a day where I do not produce anything. So for me, I learned, because I never did before, I learned from Kevin while I was on staff with him at Canyon Ridge here in Las Vegas, to establish a day a week as a Sabbath where I didn't do anything. I didn't produce anything. Generally for me that was Monday, because Saturday and Sunday were work days for me. And so I didn't, that's not the day that I did trimmed I used to call it giving our sagebrush a haircut, because we didn't have grass, just had, xeriscape. Well, I didn't wrap up a few things from the office. I sat around. Occasionally then I would go to the Y and work out a little. I spent some time by myself. I read, did a little writing, but I took his advice. I tried to not produce anything. Well, I did that for, 13 years. And then moved to Northeast Iowa and became the interim lead pastor. And I chose that same rhythm for myself. And now, another move later, or 2 moves later, because I'm back in Vegas now, I still practice it. 1 day a week. Now, my commitments, normal weekly commitments, are way less. I mean, they hardly even are a blip on the timeline of the week. I still look for and attempt a day where I don't produce. And there are weeks I've got more than one of those days. In order for that to happen, I had to, and less these days, but back when I was full-time working in ministry in churches, I had to structure this so that I could have it. In other words, the Sabbath never presented itself. I mean, any further than you got 7 days, make one of them a day of rest. I had to intentionally set it aside and practice Sabbath. I want to encourage you to consider that. If you're retired, like you, like me, have, many Sabbath days available where you don't have to produce, and in that case, then do just with one of the days, set it aside intentionally as a Sabbath. If you're still working, you will have to enforce on yourself, select the day, and then enforce it on yourself. It sounds like you've got to do this. No, I'm saying choose it and then observe a day where you produce nothing. 24 hours of no producing. Easier said than done. And I realize this. Some people have 1 day a week off. And so the Sabbath becomes more, I guess I would say, problematic. Because if you take that 1 day and produce nothing, when are you going to mow the lawn and change the oil on the car and do the laundry and catch up? And it's difficult. Here's another option. There's nothing that says you can't have 2 or 3 partial days that are Sabbaths. The point is, in his wisdom, perfect wisdom, and love for us, God knew and knows that we need time to regenerate. Because the point of rest is to give your body, soul, and spirit, and your mind a margin to relax, rest, rejuvenate. There's an old Hebrew or Greek saying that I first heard about when I read years ago, many years ago now, a Chuck Swindoll book. And I don't even remember which one it was. But here's the saying. If the bow is always bent, it will one day break. And that's true. So don't keep the bow bent. Give yourself a break. And plan, permit, execute on 24 hours where you don't do anything. And I can't guarantee anything, but I will say, I think it will work for you the way it worked for me. It gave me the margin I needed to be able on the other 6 days of the week to really engage, to bring most of my best self to whatever was in those other 6 days. All right, that's as much as I need to or really can say about the Sabbath. So I'll shut up and we'll pick it up here next time on Soul Care with Stevie Boy.